China descends into the deepest point on Earth, 1099 m, nearly 7 miles underwater. Here, there is no light, only pressure strong enough to crush a sphere made of steel. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth, reigns an unearthly science broken only by the hum of submersible engines. It's here that China has turned its gaze in the hands of science. Why now? And what are they looking for? Over the next 15 minutes, we'll dive into a world with fewer cameras than on Mars and see what China has managed to pull out of the darkness. Carbon storage in deep-sea layers, strange new life trapped in the dark, or geopolitical advantage. Which of these poses the greatest danger to the future of humanity? The Mariana Trench, a crescent-shaped crack in the Earth's crust, over 1,500 m long, reaching almost 36,000 feet at its lowest known point, Challenger Deep. This is the Hatal Zone. Any part of the ocean deeper than 20,000 feet, a region so extreme that for decades it remained almost entirely unexplored. Until 2019, fewer than a dozen people had reached Challenger Deep, and each descent was a monumental feat. Immense hydrostatic pressure over 1,000 times the pressure at sea level, and near-freezing temperatures make the trench completely inhospitable. The sea floor regularly shudders due to earthquakes, and the water contains almost no nutrients. It is such a harsh place that life, if it exists at all, must barely survive. Or so we once thought. Music, and yet there's life here. Back in 1960, the Bayo-Scap Trias briefly touched the bottom and reported seeing flatfish and shrimp-like creatures. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron descended solo into the trench and described it as a desolate and alien world. These pioneering missions were rare, perhaps one per generation, because there simply was no technology to make these kinds of journeys routine. But that is changing. Enter Fendoshi, meaning strive. Translated from Chinese, this is the newest full-ocean depth manned submersible capable of descending to the very bottom of the ocean. In November 2020, Fendoshi with 3 crew members aboard reached a depth of 1099 m, and they planted the Chinese flag on the floor of Challenger Deep. It was a national record that made China one of the few countries to reach the ocean's maximum depth. Upon touching down at the bottom, the craft not only set a record, but also broadcast the first-ever live video transmission from the deepest part of the ocean. Thanks to the submersible, China shifted from occasional deep-sea dives to maintaining consistent presence there. In fact, after it entered full service in 2021, Fendoshi carried out multiple dives in the trench during a single expedition, a sharp contrast to earlier one-off missions. By the end of 2024, it had completed a total of 336 dives. Once a single dive was an event of a decade. Now, China conducts them in series. So what changed to make this possible? At the heart of Fendoshi is a titanium alloy sphere 6 feet in diameter that safely holds a pilot and 2 scientists. Its walls are so thick it can withstand pressures of 0 atmospheres at full ocean depth. The small size and carefully engineered shape minimize weak points. Even a single defect could be catastrophic under pressure equal to 90 adult elephants pressing on every square inch. Attached to the sphere is a frame carrying all the tools a deep-sea researcher might need. Robotic arms extend from the front of the submersible to collect rock, sediment, or marine life samples. These manipulators are extremely precise. Fendoshi's pilots have used them to gently pluck fragile sea creatures from the mud and even recover previously deployed scientific instruments. Fendoshi carries a terrain mapping sonar, a forward-looking sonar to avoid obstacles, and an acoustic Doppler velocity log to track movement relative to the seafloor. In essence, it can see in the dark using sound, navigating confidently through the jagged walls and canyons of the trench. One of its most groundbreaking features is a communication system. Traditionally, deep-sea submersibles lose real-time contact. Radio waves cannot travel underwater, and great depth makes data transmission slow or impossible. But the developers, including the CAS Institute of Acoustics, created something new, a deep-sea acoustic modem capable of sending text, voice, and even images from 36,000 feet below up to a support ship. This real-time communication is a game share. It means scientists aboard the ship or even on land via satellite can guide the mission mid-dive, saying things like point the camera towards that interesting rock or grab that strange fish. It also means that if something goes wrong, the support team knows immediately. Another key to fine success is efficient operation and durable design. It uses powerful lithium batteries and an optimized ballast system, reducing descent time and extending bottom time. A typical dive might take over 3 hours to descend, 6 hours to explore, and 3 hours to ascend. The sub is designed for daily cycles, weather permitting. Unlike older generation subs that required lengthy inspections or refits after a single deep dive, Vendoshi can be prepared for another mission relatively quickly, allowing multiple dives within one campaign. Every detail matters. A large science basket holds up to 220 kilograms of samples. Floodlights illuminate targets for collection, and high-definition cameras record everything in total darkness. The result: the sub can roam the ocean floor, gather dozens of samples, record hours of footage, then surface, ready to do it all again the next day or next week. So, one might assume that at these depths, life is rare and hanging by a thread. In fact, scientists previously hypothesized that deep trenches might host only a small number of living organisms, perhaps a few microbes surviving on nutrients that sink down with sediments. After all, how could anything thrive under immense pressure, near freezing temperatures, and total darkness? For a long time, this was more than a hypothesis. It was almost taken as a given, supported by extremely limited direct observations. At 100 atmospheres, proteins tend to misfold and enzyme reactions slow down because pressure compresses the internal cavities required for many enzymes to function. And yet, reality is astonishing. The deep trench ecosystem is far from a sterile void. It teems with life. Chinese expeditions have found thriving communities even in the icy waters of Challenger Deep. A comprehensive research project called the Mariana Trench Environment and Ecology Research, or MAE, recently made a sensational discovery, a burst of microbial diversity where extremely low levels had been expected. When scientists led by Shanghai Shaoxing University and IDSSE sampled over 1,600 seafloor sediments at depths from 20,000 to 36,000 feet, they identified 7,564 species of microorganisms, and a striking 89% of them were completely new. Nearly 9 out of 10 microbes found had never been recorded before. This is not just a few exotic bacteria. It proves that the entire ecosystems exist in the Halal zone unlike anything previously known. How is this possible? It seems that extreme selective conditions, high pressure, low energy, and cold have forced microbial life to adapt in unique ways. The MAE project found that many of these microbes carry special genes responsible for producing pressure-resistant enzymes and molecules that protect their cells. And it doesn't just apply to microbes. Macroscopic fauna also live here. Hadal amphipods are scavenger shrimp-like creatures that swarm the trench floor. And the Mariana snailfish has been spotted at depths over 26,000 feet, setting the record for the deepest living fish in the world. These snailfish look fragile and have transparent bodies, yet they thrive where even submarines struggle. The fact that vertebrates can live at such depth shows how life, given even a small opportunity, finds a way. This thriving ecosystem, far beyond the reaches of sunlight, changes our understanding of Earth's biosphere. Imagine how exciting it is. A single spoonful of sediment from a trench can contain thousands of new microbes and possibly even compounds with medical potential. We're literally uncovering entire branches of the tree of life that have remained hidden in the abyss. Wherever microbial life is abundant, viruses are usually present, too. But would viruses dare to go that deep? In 2023, Chinese biologists proved the answer is yes. Discovering a record-breaking virus at a depth of about 29,000 feet in Mariana Tech sediments, they found a new virus, a bacteriophage, now known by the enigmatic name VBHMEH4907. In simple terms, it's a virus that infects bacteria, and it's the deepest isolated virus ever found in the ocean. Just think about that. Even nearly 6 miles down, viruses are active. This particular phase targets Halomonas bacteria, which are themselves hearty microbes living in deep-sea sediments. Remarkably, this virus follows a lysogenic cycle. Instead of immediately killing its bacterial host, it inserts its DNA and quietly replicates as the bacteria divide. In the harsh conditions of the trench, even the virus seems to know not to kill its only host. It is a patient predator waiting for the right moment. When researchers sequence its genome, they realize that H4907 is not just a strange deep-sea virus. It is so different from others that it represents a completely new family never seen before. They propose naming it severe to highlight its uniqueness. Interestingly, comparing genetic data, they found relatives of this virus widely spread in the oceans. This means what was found in the trench is not a random anomaly or an isolated relic. It's part of a widespread hidden viral lineage that spans the seas and particularly thrives in the depths. What's so important about finding a virus at the ocean floor? Well, first it shows that the web of life extends to the Halal depths. Viruses regulate microbial populations, even here, infecting and sometimes killing bacteria. We know that in shallower waters, viruses play a major role in nutrient cycles and carbon flow. Remarkably, these viruses and bacteria from the trenches are so alien to us, our immune system doesn't even recognize them. They are part of a biosphere completely removed from human experience, effectively invisible to our bodies. Now, while this sounds scary, it actually means life here does not pose a direct threat to us. However, the reverse is not necessarily true. But more on that later. Life at depth is mostly a story of scarcity. Constant hunger in a land where food is too scarce. Most creatures here feed only on particles of marine snow or occasional scraps of organic matter. But from time to time, something dramatic happens. A giant meal fall from above. Imagine the body of a whale larger than a school bus drifting into the abyss after death. What happens when it finally lands on that barren seafloor? Scientists call this a whale fall, and it's one of the most spectacular events in deep-sea ecology. Recently, researchers on EV Nautilus encountered a scene just like this off the coast of California at Davidson Seamount. While it's not the Mariana Trench, it provides insight into what could happen even in the deepest trenches. They found the skeleton of a whale about 16 feet long lying on the seafloor, and it was relatively fresh. Bits of subcutaneous fat and even internal organs still remained. Within hours of the whale arriving on the bottom, a striking transformation begins. Once empty, the seafloor becomes a bustling arena. Large predators and scavengers enter the stage. In shallow water, sleeper sharks or hagfish might make an appearance, but here eel pouts, which are slender eel-like fish, were actively tearing strips of fat. Alongside them, swarms of crustaceans dig into soft tissue. And over days to weeks, smaller inhabitants join in. Polychaete worms and mollusks that feast on the remaining fat. Nautilus footage even shows deep-sea octopuses. Then one of the strangest guests at this natural banquet appears. Enter bone-eating worms called edex. These tiny worms colonize bones, digesting the fats and oils inside. And in the discovered whale fall, Oidax has already started growing out of the whale's bones like pink bristles, slowly penetrating the bone to reach the nutrient-rich marrow. A single whale fall can support a local ecosystem for years or even decades. Scientists have discovered numerous new species, mollusks, snails, and bacteria that live only on whale falls, taking advantage of the sudden influx of nutrients in the deep desert. For the Halal zone, an event like this is like a feast during a great famine. A single fallen whale carcass creates an entire deep-sea oasis. This highlights an important fact. Even in the most extreme depths on Earth, ecosystems are deeply connected to the world above. It would be comforting to think that the Mariana Trench, so remote and extreme, remains a pristine world untouched by humans. However, one of the harsh revelations from recent dives is that even the deepest ocean trench has not escaped our influence. In 2019, a scientific study led by deep-sea researcher Alan Jameson caused a sensation when scientists lowered traps into Challenger Deep and other trenches to collect small scavenger crustaceans called amphipods. And they found tiny pieces of plastic in the stomachs of those creatures. Imagine that. A plastic fiber from a discarded bottle or synthetic clothing drifting for years, sinking miles into the water, eventually ending up in the stomach of a shrimp-like amphipod at a depth of 36,000 feet. This is a current reality. In this study, 100% of amphipods sampled from the Mariana Trench had at least one microelastic fiber in their digestive tract. In several Pacific trenches, more than 72% of all studied amphipods contain microelastics. This prevalence is comparable to pollution levels in some coastal marine animals, which is shocking. The deepest ocean is proportionally as polluted as waters near populated shores. How does plastic even get there? The oceans are a connected system, and the deep sea ultimately serves as a final resting place for much of the waste we produce. Tiny plastic particles from our trash are carried by currents and sink in the form of marine snow, a constant rain of debris from the surface. Over decades, this snow accumulates on the seafloor. The Mariana Trench, being one of the lowest points on Earth, acts as a trap. Imagine it as the ocean seeing as trash can. Anything that sinks deep enough eventually ends up in these deep trenches. In fact, as early as 2019, a diver visiting Challenger Deep reported seeing a plastic bag drifting on the seafloor at nearly 7 m deep. The consequences are serious. These amphipods are part of the trench food chain. They are prey for larger creatures like snail, fish, and other scavengers. By reaching the very bottom of the food chain, our synthetic waste can affect the entire ecosystem, potentially carrying toxic chemicals or disrupting nutrition. Moreover, these disturbing findings prove that no place on the planet remains truly untouched by humans. Microplastics in the Hallel Zone also remind us that the deep ocean plays an important role in climate and chemical cycles. Typically, when organic matter such as dead plankton sinks to the bottom, it locks carbon away for centuries, a crucial part of the Earth's carbon cycle and climate regulation. We also know that deep-sea sediments are one of the largest carbon reservoirs on the Earth. But if this marine snow is mixed with plastic and pollutants, we don't yet fully understand how it might alter carbon storage or harm these deep-sea carbon reserves. Ensuring their health is in our best interest. At first glance, the Mariana Trench appears to be a treasure trove of biological discoveries. But why is it increasingly called a strategic frontier? And what exactly are countries like China really looking for there? A few years earlier, we found out that China had quietly placed powerful acoustic sensors on the seafloor and strategically important locations near Guam, the main U.S. military base in the Pacific. One of these listening devices is in Challenger Deep. Officially, China claims these sensors help monitor earthquakes, typhoons, and whales, all legitimate scientific purposes. But security experts point out the obvious. This same equipment could track submarines and even intercept underwater communication. Essentially, the trench as is now, a hydrophone located 7 miles deep that can pick up the faint hum of a submarine or the ping of sonar from an incredible distance, some having a range of more than 1,000 m. Because sound travels efficiently in deep water, a sensor on the trench floor near Guam could potentially monitor a huge swath of the western Pacific. It's no coincidence that these sensors are located near strategically important U.S. points. Beyond surveillance, there's the issue of resources and infrastructure. The deep seafloor around trenches is known to contain valuable minerals. For example, polymetallic nodules that are rich in rare metals. China, like other countries, has great interest in deep-sea mining. Around the time of the Fendoshi dive, China established a joint research center with the International Seabed Authority to develop deep-sea mining technology. Mariana Trench lies in international waters, meaning its resources are governed by international treaties. But this hasn't stopped a competitive race to explore and claim areas adjacent to the trench on the abyssal plains. The geopolitical undertone of scientific missions is clear. Mapping the trench and sampling its rocks could be the first steps toward future mining, or at the very least securing mining rights. Additionally, undersea cables, the backbone of the global internet and communication, pass through these waters. You might wonder how cables relate to the trench. A significant portion of global internet traffic travels through fiber optic cables laid on the Pacific seafloor. Some routes pass near the Mariana Trench connecting Asia with North America. In 2025, Chinese scientists revealed something that drew worldwide attention. A compact deep-sea cable-cutting device that can be deployed on submersibles like Vendoshi. This tool can descend to depths up to 13,000 feet and sever even the thickest underwater communication or power line. For the first time, a country openly acknowledged having this capability. Officially, the device is described as a tool for civilian salvage and mining. For example, to help recover entangled cables or assist in deep-sea construction. But its strategic potential is obvious and alarming. About 95% of global data flows through these deep-sea internet cables. With a tool like that, a state could theoretically cut communication to entire regions during a conflict or sabotage an opponent economy from the ocean's depths. Overall control of the deep sea can influence surface-level politics. If a country can extract valuable minerals from the seafloor, it gains economic and technological advantages. If it can control or even disrupt underwater activity, it gains military and intelligence advantages. Currently, China is investing heavily to become that very country. So, what does all of this mean? These expeditions are more than just journeys in search of adrenaline. They signify that humanity is reaching into one of the last unexplored corners of our planet with consequences across many fronts: scientific, environmental, and geopolitical. Since that historic 2020 mission, Chinese crews, as part of global cooperation, have piloted Fendoshi and all the deep trenches of the world. By the end of 2024, there have been 336 dives, an incredible achievement in such a short time. This frequency generates a huge flow of data, biological samples, DNA sequences, high-resolution maps, geological cores, and water chemistry profiles. Importantly, the reliability of the submersible inspires confidence in even bolder endeavors. Plans are now underway to deploy autonomous deep-sea landers and robots that will use the knowledge gained from designing Fendoshi. What will happen when autonomous machines can patrol the seafloor around the clock and collect data more effectively than satellites in the sky? What was once an adventure occurring once a decade has now become a continuous scientific campaign. China's investment in this technology not only boosts its scientific prestige, but also gives it capabilities that very few other countries possess, which, as we have seen, has consequences far beyond science. Will there soon be treaties to prohibit the militarization of the ocean depths? We began with a question of what might be down there in the dark. Now we know extraordinary life, enduring mysteries, and a stage. But humanity's finest qualities and darkest ambitions play out. And as we resurface from this journey, one persistent question remains. Will the next breakthrough in the ocean be not the discovery of a new underwater species, but the emergence of new tools that solve problems here on the surface?